Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jim Thompson. I'm from Concentric. We're located downtown Charleston, South Carolina. This is forum update number 13. So for 24 months or so, 25 months, we've been doing forum updates. In 2015, we've been doing an update generally once a month, the last Wednesday of the month during lunchtime. They've been rather successful in terms of getting folks started in their quest to move from the 2008 to the 2015 version of the standard. So this is our way of kind of giving back specifically to those customers that we've done business with for years. So please feel free to pass this along. And we will also have another forum in October. Let's see what that date. Wednesday, October 28th at noon. So at that point, we'll probably end the regular monthly forums, because at that point there won't be much more to update you on. But stay tuned. There is one other minor update coming down the pipeline in mid-October, and I'll talk to you about that. Real quick, the more you ask questions, the better the session will go. So please keep your phone on mute unless you have a question or a comment. I'd love to gather questions. We actually have compiled lots of Q&A and published a blog on our website. We've also kind of built each session in previous forums around different questions people have submitted either through chat or through the discussion during the webinar or emails to us after the fact. So if you have questions, let us know. I'll be the first to say I don't know the answer to a lot of the questions. Well, I know the answer to a lot of questions. I don't know the answer to all of them, but it's always a good opportunity for me to go and do some research. So feel free to pass those along. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Real quick here. So what are we? Why are we doing this? What are we in the business of doing? In short, Concentric's a quality resource hub. As I mentioned, we're located downtown Charleston. We've also recently opened a location in São Paulo, Brazil. We're staffed in North America, South America, and Europe. We do training, development, consulting. We have some educational products. We place subject matter experts for special projects for our clients, and then we represent several software companies that we either resell or implement and train their customers on how to use their software. So just a bit about us. Where are we in the whole grand scheme of changes as it relates to the development of the standard? So today is the 30th, so a week ago today, the ISO 9001 2015 standard was officially published, released, announced. You could go and buy the standard. The final draft international standard, it had a voting phase from July 9th to September 9th. There was at least a 75% approval rating, which ended and resulted in the release and publication of ISO 9001 2015. So that's where we are relative to pretty much a 3-year cycle of review and updates and, submitting surveys for feedback and that sort of thing. So we're off to the races, and the standard is now published. So one of the things that you'll notice about the new standard right off the bat is the layout. Instead of 8 clauses, there are 10 clauses, and there's a document called Annex SL You can see here at the top, it says perfect alignment via Annex SL. Annex SL is the document that has been released. That's basically the management system standard framework. So it's a standard for management system standards, in that irrespective of what type of management system standard is published, the technical committees that work on creating and modifying those standards need to follow the basic 10 clause layout as you see here. So with these clauses aligned, for example, if you had evaluation, if you had an internal auditing procedure and you needed to address that in a document or a manual, for all three occupational health and safety, environmental, and quality standards, you would find the requirements for internal audits in the same section or clause of the standard. So it allows for better alignment specifically for those companies, those organizations that have multiple management system standards that they have to maintain and audit to and that sort of thing. So at the highest level, that's probably one of the first things that you'll recognize as a difference between the 2008 version and the 2015 version. So just general layout-wise, as I mentioned, the 2008 version has the 8-clause structure, and clause 4 through 8 is where you'll find the requirements. So these are the kind of the 5 fingers of the requirements hand here. The 2015 version is very similar in terms of section 1, 2, and 3, clause 1, 2, and 3, and then you'll have 7 clauses that are represented here that contain requirements that you have to comply with, that you'll be audited to, that you need to ensure you're monitoring and evaluating yourself, so on and so forth. So that's just another look at the layout. Here's the layout as it exists in terms of the 28 sub-clauses. We actually went through and counted out of all of these 28 sub-clauses how many shall statements there were, how many requirements there were total, and we came up with 321. So there's 321. The organization shall do this, shall do that. So within the sub-clauses is where you'll find those 321 requirements from the standard. There's a nice illustration coming up that's, I think, better for you as a tool than this slide. I've got this printed out at my desk, actually, and I reference it quite a bit. So it's this one here. So here's if you were to take the standard, open it up, and look at each particular section, what you have is kind of a preface here. You've got the table of contents, this stuff kind of prior to getting into the meat and potatoes. Right here you have the requirements, clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then you have these 2 other sections at the end called Annex A and Annex B. Annex A is clarification. It's an informative section, basically, to give a little bit more clarification and terminology and reasons behind the concepts of some of the changes to the standard. And then Annex B shows other standards that the technical committee responsible for 9000, 9001, and 9004. These are other quality management system or quality management standards that technical committee has been responsible for. So that's the layout. And there's one other kind of breakout. The majority of the requirements are in this do section, in the operation. So production or whatever service you have that is value add to the customer is in this section. In the 2008 version, that would be well aligned with 7.5. So this slide is a breakout and further detail of that operation requirement. So you'll see operational planning similar to APQP or project planning, requirements for the product, design and development, control of externally provided processes for products and services, product and service provision. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road with what you're selling to the customer, and then release of product and services. So that's the general layout, and I find this slide and this slide to be particularly valuable to me in terms of trying to navigate my way around where the new requirements are within the standard versus where they were in 2008. This is a breakdown in a little bit more detail of Annex A. It just goes to show where, for example, risk-based thinking, there's a section in there that tells you a little bit more about what risk-based thinking, what the concept is all about, what's the purpose, organizational knowledge, understanding interested parties. So just a bit of a breakdown there. And then these are the other requirements, the other standards, the other documents that are published and monitored and managed by Technical Committee TC 176. And then you'll see some citations at the back that goes to show where different references have been made. Before I go any further, does anyone have any questions? Good pause point for me to take a drink of water too. All right, if you have questions, feel free to chat, use your little chat feature there, or unmute yourself and ask away. So a couple of the key terms that you'll see that are different now in the 2000 version and the 2008 version, the standard kind of shoved products and services within the same bucket called products. And so some organizations had a little bit of a difficult time trying to translate some of the requirements because they don't make products or they don't sell products. They're just a service organization. So products has now become products and services. In the draft, which was 2 versions ago, the draft international standard stage, this was called goods and services, but it's been finalized to state products and services. Exclusions, there is no allowance within the standard for exclusions, and then back in the appendix or Annex A, what you'll see is Annex A clause A.5. There's some explanation as to what we mean by not having exclusion. So basically, if there's a requirement that's needed to fulfill a customer need or a promise to the customer, if there's a process or a requirement that applies to servicing that customer, then it applies to your management system. If not, it's just not applicable. The other thing that I think is really interesting is the management representative. It's not used. There is no one single management representative. The earnest doesn't fall back on one particular person, but the leadership of the organization is considered the management representative. So it's the responsibility of the full leadership team rather than just one individual as we've seen it in the past. Documentation, quality manual, documented procedures, records, those are all under this umbrella called documented information. This is one I'm not really pumped about. I personally like to know what types of documents are records and what types of documents are procedures and what kind is a manual. But it's just generalized a bit more generic, putting all of these under the umbrella of the term documented information. A work environment, that is now environment for the operation of processes. So whatever environment is necessary, whatever suitable environment is needed for the execution, operation of a process, be that noise, temperature, light, cleanliness, whatever it is, it's more open as environment as opposed to work environment. Monitoring and measurement equipment is now monitoring and measurement resources. There are a lot of processes within organizations that are not monitored and measured by equipment, such as your eyeballs. That's not really equipment, or your own judgment and pass or fail. So resources just opens that up a bit more. This went from device to equipment, and now it's monitoring measurement resources. So anything used to monitor and measure and make a pass-fail decision falls under that umbrella. And supplier, there isn't a mention of supplier in the standard. It's called external provider. That might be a provider of products. It might be a provider of services. It might be, someone you contract with, an intern, a co-op, anyone that's contingent, anyone that is involved in providing a product and a service to your customer that is not considered an internal provider, such as an employee or someone like that. So just some major differences in terms there in summary. So what is the intent of the latest revisions? So first of all, integration, as you saw with Annex SL and how the multiple management system standards now have to follow that same 1 through 10 layout, clause 1 through 10 layout. Integration becomes much easier. There's also terminology that allows better integration with your business, better integration with strategic planning within your business. So in ISO TS 16949, which is an automotive international standard, there's been the requirement to connect your quality objectives with your business plan. So for automotive suppliers, that connection has been there. Well, now it's there at the base level 9001 as well. Considering your strategic planning for your business and making sure there's alignment with your quality management system and vice versa. What the technical committee is saying that published this document is that the latest revision provides a stable core that should stay as the layout for 9001 and associated standards for the next 15 plus years. I don't know if that's a commitment from them to say they're not going to change this in the next cycle, which is 6 years down the road, 6-7 years down the road. But it does provide a stable core, and there are some statements around the fact that they're not going to change that core layout of the standard for some time to come. Improved relevance. So there are some, for example, again, using products and services, or products or services rather than just products. Relevant, that makes the standard relevant to service and product organizations, also large and small organizations. A focus on desired results. That has been there, but there's a much better emphasis on desired results, focusing on the intent of executing a process, the intent of satisfying your customer, and really focusing on the output of a process. And then we've also had a lot of advances in technology and quality management system practices over the last 15, 20 years. So the latest version kind of brings the standard up to speed. So some key language here. This is no different than what you've seen in the past, which is the term shall, which indicates a requirement. But there's a couple other things in here that are worth noting. There is the word should. Should indicates a recommendation. Not a requirement, but a recommendation. May indicates a permission. So you may consider something, or you may do something. Keep in mind that if you were writing a nonconformity, you wouldn't write that nonconformity up under a should or a may. Can, this indicates a possibility or a capability. And then notice for guidance and understanding or clarifying the associated requirement. So if you're writing a nonconformity to a supplier or some sort of finding within your own organization, you would write them up against these 321 shalls here versus a should or a may. You might look at these for opportunities for improvement or system weaknesses, but they're not firm requirements that you're forced to comply with, unless your customer says otherwise or your own internal requirements state otherwise. So just a couple of key language reviews there. This is interesting. It's a part of the beginning of the standard, Figure 1. You're probably familiar with this in terms of, maybe you've heard SIPOC. Typically it's supplier input, process, output, and customer. This is really about the same thing, except supplier, they're not necessarily using the word supplier, but they're saying predecessor processes at providers instead of suppliers. And you've got your input, activities, output. This is just to show and help to stress the importance of transitioning to this standard and making sure that you're focusing on a process approach, process-oriented approach, and specific control points in which a process could be broken or not executed the way you want. So this is an illustration at the beginning of the standard that's meant to break down and get you to focus on a single process and where risk and vulnerabilities may be within that single process. You also see an illustration at Figure 2, which is similar to what we saw on page X in the 2008 version. This is kind of your PDCA cycle, and the idea here is that you define who you are as an organization and have a management system that you put together in order to fulfill your customer requirements. And then leadership, doesn't say top management, but it says leadership now is responsible for planning, kind of go around this way, planning, the support and execution, the do stage, the check stage, and then the action stage, and onto improvement and going around and around like you did before. So very similar. And ultimately what you're looking at is the effects on customer satisfaction, the effects on your outputs, based on certain lines of products and services, and then at the most macro level the results of your quality management system overall. So transitioning, what are the expectations for the transition to the new standard? First of all, we recommend working directly with your current registrar and your customers. And the reason for that is some registrars may have a different timeline in which they want you to transition over. Customers have been known to say, hey, supply chain, specifically tier 1 suppliers to OEMs, we want you to transition quicker than the standard 3-year transition period. So don't assume that the default 3-year transition period from September 2015 to September 2018 is going to apply to you. Check in with your registrar if you're currently registered to 9001, and certainly check in with your customers to make sure that they're okay with that 3-year default timeline. So 18 months after publication, approximately March of 2017, if you're getting certified, registered, whatever you want to call it, for the first time, your initial certificate needs to be to the 2015 version. So after March 2017, what that's saying is registrars cannot issue certificates of registration to the 2008 version of the standard. I don't know why you'd want to do that anyway, but I have had that question come up with several participants in the webinar. So what I would also recommend, it was another question that came up during last month's webinar. It was a kind of an off-page question, but the question was, if we're going to receive training or go to auditor training or just an overview of 9001, should we get trained on the 2008 version or the 2015? And I would recommend the 2015. There really is not a lot of value in starting at 2018 or 2008 right now. It's just going to be obsolete here in 3 years anyway. So 2018 is the deadline. I would start now, at the latest start in 2016. But what's going to happen is, for those of you that may have been involved in transitioning from QS 9000 back in the early 2000s over to TS 16949, there was a real bottleneck. There were not enough auditors to cover companies that wanted to wait and transition really late in the game. So what happened was you had organizations that had to go to their customers and say, dear customer, we're going to have a 2, 3, 4 month lapse in our certificate because there just aren't enough auditors to audit all the companies that are waiting till the last minute. So avoid that bottleneck. Start talking to your registrar and your customers now. Don't wait until Q2, Q3, 2018. It's just going to be a real traffic jam at that time. You can mark my words on that. It's going to be kind of nasty. One valuable tool, there's a called IAFID 9 2015, and it's the Transition Planning Guidance for ISO 9001 2015. You can find this. Let me flip over here real quick. If you go to our website, acommoncenter.com, you can see it up in your browser there. And you click on here, or you can click on here. It's going to take you to this resource page. Let me go ahead and go over there. So there's a ton of resources here. Each month's forum recording is here. And then let me see what I was referring to back over here. The transition planning guidance document right here. You can find this IAF transition planning guidance document. So what we've done is we've tried to compile the latest and greatest articles, key links, videos, that sort of thing, all together here in one spot, so you don't have to go out searching for it. Somebody's moving around. If you could hit mute on your phone, that'd be awesome. All right, let's move back over to here. So that's where you can get that ISO 9001 2015. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Somebody's driving to lunch or something. Okay. So another key change is this thing called context of the organization. So the idea here is right out of the bat, the first requirement is defining the context of your organization. Who are you? What are all the parts or processes of your system? Where are the fence lines? Who is an external provider? Who's an internal provider? Who are all the interested parties that you're working with in achieving whatever result you're after? You know, you might be a painter. You might be running a soccer team. You might be making rotors for brake pads. So who are you as an organization? What are all the pieces that are required? What's internal versus external? And what are the needs and the expectations of all of these interested parties? So interested parties is really everybody that is a stakeholder within the process. So that's one of the first and most significant changes within the standard. It's really defining, when you say we're registered or we are certified or we're providing quality widgets, when you use the phrase we, what does that mean? Define yourself and the context of your organization. So that's your very first batch of shall statements within the standard. Your scope can be limited to specific and identified functions or sections of the organization. So you can say our scope of the management system is for brake pads and rotors, but our scope is not for donuts. We manufacture donuts as well. So you can have your QMS very specifically connected to just one particular function or section of the organization. It's been like that before. There's just a little bit more clarity with the new version. Another thing to focus on is what are your capabilities and constraints of internal resources? Where do you need to rely on external resources? Leadership. So there's a much stronger commitment of leadership required within this version of the standard. You can see that the terminology has also changed. It's not top management, but leadership. And there's mention of management throughout the standard as well. Management may be a variety of different levels within the organization. It could be supervisors or frontline managers, group leaders, whatever. But leadership is going to be your highest level. And leadership typically is a term that's used more so in business jargon rather than top management. So there's a good alignment there. management representative. As mentioned, the management rep is not a single person, but it's the entire leadership of the organization. Leadership needs to make sure that the quality management system is compatible with the business direction, so you don't have two different systems. The QMS is used to drive organizational excellence, and we've really moved away from the term quality being related to product quality, and now we're looking at the quality management system as being a valuable tool for the business overall rather than just for the product. So what you'll see, this term is being used more and more, organizational excellence. Another example where you'll see organizational excellence alongside or in addition to quality is the American Society for Quality's certification program for what used to be called a Certified Quality Manager is now called the Certified Quality Manager / Organizational Excellence. So Certified Quality Manager / Organizational Excellence. So the idea is move beyond product and let's look at a more holistic view of quality as it relates to the overall performance of the organization. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on an expected result. The standard does not include requirements for preventive action. So preventive action goes away, which in my mind is good, because the organizations that we've worked with really never got it to begin with. Oftentimes you would see, oh gosh, our registrar is coming in next week, so let's hurry up and create a PAR so we can show that we're doing preventive action. Well, that doesn't really drive the right behavior. So one of the big focuses on the new standard is this, the use of the word risk and the phrase risk-based thinking. So the idea is in your QMS planning, you evaluate opportunities for risk, opportunities for improvement. You use risk-based thinking in making sure that as you're planning and you're changing, you look at all the things that could go wrong, could go right. So there's nothing in there that says you have to use this SWOT analysis tool, but this is just a tool that we recommend because it's so simple. And the idea is that if you're planning for your whole system or you're just planning for a specific process within your organization, do a SWOT analysis as a way of at least looking at what are your threats and your weaknesses, what are you really good at, and where are there opportunities within your organization that can make you more competitive. Risk-based targets, goals, and objectives. So instead of everything being focused on corrective actions and corrections, let's look at creating some targets, goals, and objectives for risk reduction. How can we reduce risk? How can we optimize our opportunities, reduce opportunity loss, those types of things as we design and develop our quality management system. What are effective, what are the effects of failure or uncertainty on an expected result? And then, as mentioned, preventive action is replaced. Some sectors are already prepared for this. Automotive, aerospace have been using the FMEA tool for a while now. So I'm not saying they've been using it correctly, but some sectors already have a jump start on this this concept of risk-based thinking and changes in planning based on known or potential risk. Consider risk qualitatively and quantitatively when defining the rigor and degree of formality to plan and control the quality management system. So what that means is look at the severity of a risk, the severity of something bad happening, look at the occurrence. How often does that failure surface? How often, how frequently do we expect to see a failure? And then basically a high risk should equal high controls. Okay, there's nothing prescriptive in here that defines that for you, but you've got to come up with your own means of defining the degree of control and how it aligns with the degree of risk. So some origins of risk-based thinking. It's been implicit in the standards for years. Revisions make it more explicit and clear. The idea is a part of the process approach. You're not only looking at designing or improving a process, but you're also looking at what are potential risks along the steps of a process that could have an impact on your desired result. It's meant to include opportunities for improvement as well. So, for example, if there was a risk associated with this illustration here, you could see you've got a child, and the child, maybe you just build a swimming pool and the child could get into the swimming pool. So to lower that risk, you put up a fence. Well, a child can get into a fence easily. So, you know, if the severity of the child getting into the pool is no big deal, then maybe putting up a fence and a little latch is significant enough to prevent injury or whatever. But if that's not effective, then you may want to do something like you see in a lot of resorts. You've got this little locking mechanism here that you have to be a certain height in order to be able to reach in order to open the gate. On the other end of the scale, you don't have a fence that's 9 feet high, that's brick, and it shocks the kid when the kid walks up. So you've got to kind of weigh what's reasonable with what's effective based on the risk. So that's just a quick example of risk-based thinking. Some of the companies I work with, unfortunately, they don't get this. So they say, well, we'll put a sign up here that says no one under the age of 12 should come in. Well, this little kid can't read that sign. So, use some common sense and come up with some sort of mechanism that actually works for the user. In this particular case, the user would be this child, and the idea is to prevent the child from going into this area of the pool unsupervised. So where do you start if you've never really looked at risk and risk-based thinking? If you have multiple sites, look at an enterprise level. If you're only a single site, start at a site level, but start very macro and then work yourself down to a process level. So, for example, a business continuity plan. What happens if we get snowed in? What happens if a hurricane comes, which is something we have to work around and plan here in Charleston? Contingency plans. What if certain individuals aren't here? What are our backup plans? What if we lose a key supplier? And then get down into individual processes and specific products or roles. Control plan changes and review the consequences of unintended changes. So you need to be using risk-based thinking in, not only in process design and process improvement, but also looking at change. So in this particular instance, you have the boss saying, I need a project plan to justify the resources we need to change our software. And Dilbert goes in and says, I can make those software changes in 10 seconds. And he makes the changes, and the changes are done. And the boss says, good work. Now all we need is that plan. But the real question here is, at the point of change, when Dilbert made a change to the software, what other processes are attached to that? What other impacts are there? Perhaps he's done something that that has messed up the code that connects to several other databases or information systems. So be very deliberate about change, taking into consideration those aspects within your business that may be impacted by the change. So where there's a need for change, you have to consider the purpose and the potential consequences of change. Is the integrity of the quality management system jeopardized in any way? Do you have the resources needed to effectively implement the change that you're about to make? And is there any allocation or reallocation of responsibility and authority that needs to accompany the change that you're about to make? So just, slow down, do some proper planning, evaluate your actions prior to taking the first steps, and do what you can to minimize the risk and seize those opportunities that are presented to make your company grow stronger. Knowledge or necessary knowledge, that's something that we haven't seen before. But what is the knowledge needed to achieve conformity? And that would be product conformity or process conformity. And what's the knowledge needed to effectively operate design processes or define processes? What is sufficient knowledge? What is, if you have a fork truck driver, what is the sufficient amount of knowledge that person would need before he or she is left on their own to work in the area that they're responsible for? Define what that is, and then ensure that individual has access to the knowledge. Maybe that individual worked for your supplier that was in the building next door, and there's really no real need for additional training or additional knowledge because that person really has pretty much the same role as they had next door. So their knowledge came with them as they were hired and brought into the organization. But some individuals in some roles have to rely on knowledge that's created and maintained within the organization, such as standards, work instructions, visual communication. Make sure that the individual that needs that knowledge has access to it. So to summarize, the idea here of the use of Annex SL is the better management system integration through that shared structure, through that common structure. There's a fire, but it's not here. It's just a fire truck driving by, so we're fine. And as I mentioned before, stable core, the 10-clause structure provides a stable core of the requirements for the next 10 plus years. The updates are more relevant to various organizational types, such as service organizations. There's a focus on risk and more focused than ever on achieving desired results, taking into account technological advances in QMS practices during the last 15 years. And then really the standard is better aligned with business today than it has been in the past. There's better integration with the business management system and the quality management system practices. So what are some of the next steps for you? You can go out and purchase the standard now. As I mentioned, it was released on the 23rd of September, which was this time last week. Another option is that the current version on sale is the international version. The American National Standards will publish their version, should be available here in a couple weeks. And if your organization or you as an individual, if you're an ASQ member, there will be discounts given of that version. Can the standard be, let me go back to that question. Can the standard be purchased DI in PDF and printed form. Yes. Both, and yes. Let me bring you over here quick. So here's the standard. If you go to asq.org quality press, you put in 9,120.15. It's $173. You can buy it here, but you can also see saying an identical version is expected to be adopted as an ANS, American National Standard, by mid-October, at which time ASQ members will be able to purchase it at a discounted price. Several of us here in the office are ASQ members, so we're going to wait and get the discounted rate. We also bought the final draft international standard, which nothing's changed from that version, which was this, to this. So we're going to work off of the FDIS for now and wait a couple weeks and get a discount. I would recommend that you develop a transition plan with your leadership. You know, what do you want to have done by when, and how do you coordinate that with your registrar? When's your next surveillance audit? And start thinking about your overall timeline. I suspect somewhere between 6 to 12 months to be adequate for transitioning over to the new version of the standard. So start those talks now. Some other resources that you can use, I just showed you. You can go to acommoncenter.com or cmsicharleston.com. You can click here, and you'll see all types of tools and references and videos and everything kind of pulled together at that location. Again, you can also go there. By the end of this week, we will have this particular recording posted on that web page as well. I just showed you where you could go and buy the standard. Again, there's the link, asq.org/qualitypress, or you could just search for that on your browser, and it'll bring you to this page. And then we also have 2 different classes coming up here in Charleston, November 10th through the 12th. This will be up in North Charleston at the Crown Plaza, and then December 8th through the 10th, also at the Crown Plaza. For those of you that are in automotive, November 13th will be an add-on day. It's a Friday. If you're interested in the additional requirements to TS 16949, the 2009 version, let's say for a lead auditor course, if you're auditing to that standard, that last day, that 4th day, we have an add-on there. Here is basically the 4 of us that are here at the home base, and the various ways you can get in touch with us. I'm Jim. Megan is my assistant. Ronnie is marketing and IT, and Sydney is our general manager. If you care to connect through social media, there are various ways to do that. So with that said, I am going to open up the floor for questions, comments, and discussion. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. This is Cynthia Staley.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi. With the changes to the ISO, will there be any additional changes to the TS automotive specific requirements in correlation to these changes to the ISO standard?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, and that's a great question. What I would recommend
those changes go into effect?
Those are going to be next year. Let me point out something here. If you go to this this one right here, which is the July webinar, I talk a little bit more, I kind of take a deep dive on aerospace sector updates and automotive sector updates.
Okay.
So you can get some more information there by looking at that. There's also the IATF has published several publications saying, finally, yes, we're going to go follow the lead using 9001 as the baseline document for our automotive standard. It actually took about 18 months longer than aerospace to say that they're going to go in that same direction, which is kind of funny. But yes, that's expected next year. Good question.
Thank you.
There was one other question that came through. The fourth day add-on will have any information concerning ISO 9001:2015. So the fourth day add-on will be really specifically to the TS add-ons. If you're in transition at this current time, you have TS 16949, but you're wanting to move to ISO 9001:2015, the first 3 days would be covering the new 9001:2015. The automotive day, or that fourth day for TS, would be what are the differences that are not covered by 9001:2015, and how do you comply really with both standards at this current time? How do you transition to the new 9001 while still maintaining your TS 16949 certification in good standing? So that's what that fourth day is all about. It really didn't make much sense to have only a class for TS and only a class for 9001. So what we did is we just had we've changed it to 3 days for everyone, and then a fourth day if you're a subscriber to TS. So, Pam, thanks for the questions. Good questions there. Pam, I would say one more thing about the PDF version. I like the PDF version simply because I like to be able to search the document quickly for requirements. Typically, I'll bring my iPhone or a tablet along, and it's easy to search for. Just do a Control F and search for key terms while I'm doing an audit. But I can tell you that based on the final draft international standard that I bought about a month ago, if you think you're just going to be able to print the PDF off, good luck. I mean, it's nearly impossible. They've put some lockdowns to make sure that you can't print a hard copy. They want you to buy the PDF, and they also want you to buy the printed version as well. So, I would recommend waiting until the discount phase, buying it from ASN, buying it on the ASQ website, and purchase both. I know there's also licensing for an enterprise, so if you have enough people working in your organization, it might make sense to go ahead and buy a site license or an enterprise license for the PDF, and then buy individual standards that are printed. My assumption is that they're going to have the smaller size standards like they've had in the past, where you kind of got the 8.5 by 11 full size, and then you've got a version about half that size that's easier to haul around for an audit. So good questions there. Any other questions before we sign off? One more question here. Thank you, Jim and team. Thank you. You can reach me. Don't email me. I get a zillion emails a day. If you need me urgently, call this 843-469-8279 or That's probably the best way to do it. After the recording, I'll also stay on the line for another minute or two. But for now, I'll sign off the recording. Thanks, everyone, for joining.